Hey guys, it's Allie, the Canine Nutritionist from Pad Foot Palms. So I wanted to make a little video about one of the questions that I get asked all the time, especially in the Facebook group, and that is about rotation. So one of the key things that's kind of like one of my little mottos that you will hear me say over and over is that the key to optimal nutrition is rotation. And I've gotten a lot of questions about, well, Allie, what does that mean? What are we rotating? Are we rotating brands? Are we rotating proteins? Are we rotating different types of food? And the answer is yes. So let's get right into it. First up, when we're talking about rotation, we need to understand what rotation is. So what is it? Rotation is a process by which you are introducing new types of foods, new proteins, right, into your dog's diet. Why do we do this? Well, the goal is twofold. So first of all, we want to make sure that our dog is not getting bored with their food, right? Nobody wants to eat the same thing day in, day out, every day for the rest of their life, right? That sounds terrible. Secondly, we want to introduce new proteins and different types of foods so that your dog can have a diverse microbiome. What does that mean? It means that their body is better equipped digestively to break down new foods when they come into contact with them. It is better able to protect them against parasites. You hear a lot about veterinarians discussing the more diverse a microbiome is, the healthier the dog is, right? They have a huge boost in their immune system. So there are a lot of factors that go into it. And one of the key things that you want to remember nutritionally is you are going to better ensure that your dog is getting all of the nutrients and minerals and amino acids that they need by providing that variety. Another key point to remember in rotation is you're also going to reduce your dog's risk of developing allergies. So many times when we see, clients come in and they've got, these dogs with these horrible allergies, 9 times out of 10, it's usually to the protein source. Not always, but it's usually to the protein source. So that's one of the things that a canine nutritionist or even your vet will tell you to switch foods. So that's rotation. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of how often you should be rotating your dog's food. Okay, so when we're looking at how often we should rotate our dog's food, there are quite a few factors that play into this. So you'll want to take a look at this list that I'm about to go over and see kind of what applies to you, what applies to your dog, because I'm going to be talking about a lot of different reasons that may affect, how often you do rotation. So first off is going to be your level of commitment to doing a slow transition. And what I mean by that is if you go into the Pad Foot Palms Facebook group, I have some different options for transitioning your dog from one food to another. And it's really going to depend on your level of commitment on, okay, are you going to plan ahead and make sure that you have enough of existing food to be able to transition them over to new food. And it's going to depend on, okay, are you willing to do this slow transition over a week? Are you willing to get the slippery elm bark powder and the pumpkin puree, and make sure that you have that on hand in case they have any loose stools. You can go ahead and address it during your transition. So a lot of it is going to depend on you and how committed you are to doing the transition. Now, I will say that the more you do it, right? Not necessarily the more you do it in a specific time frame, but the more you transition and rotate over time, the shorter that transition time becomes. So people who have been doing rotation and transitions for their dogs over a period of months or years can transition their dogs very quickly from one food to another because their body is better equipped and is familiar with that protein, and so they're better able to break it down. So that's one of the first key points. The next one is going to depend on your dog. So some dogs are more prone to having a more sensitive stomach than others. Some breeds will be more sensitive than others. Specifically in my experience, having a standard poodle, she is a little bit more sensitive to a transition than, say, my Pomeranians. So that's just something that you're going to want to keep in mind, and you're going to want to be patient, right? Every dog is different. So especially if you have a multi-dog home, each dog may have their own requirements as far as transitioning them to a new food. Some may be able to do it more quickly than others. Some may always need a slow transition over a period of 2 weeks. But a lot of it is going to be trial and error in the beginning. So you just want to keep that in mind and be patient with your dog. The next key point for rotation is going to depend on your budget. So especially when you're doing a rotation of different types of foods, you may find that a raw diet requires a different level of initial investment than, say, a bag of kibble. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that that raw diet is more expensive than the kibble. You're going to have to do the math and better calculate how that, works out depending on the size of your dog. But usually when you're going from one type of food to another, there's going to be a price adjustment up front, right? So that raw food, you may have to buy a larger amount of it, which in turn costs you more, but it actually lasts longer than, say, the smaller bag of kibble, which you had been getting previously. I'm just using that as an example. So you're going to want to take a look at your budget and kind of pre-plan, okay, so I've done kibble for this bag, and I've been doing chicken, and now I think I'd really like to introduce them to a freeze-dried beef variety. Okay, so you'll just want to pre-plan that and go ahead and take a look. Chewy.com is an excellent source, especially if you're going to do some price comparisons, not sponsored. I would love to be sponsored. Chewy.com, please reach out to me. So you'll just want to do some price comparisons and see what's going to work best for your budget. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about types of foods. So there are quite a few types of foods that you get to choose from. And I don't want you to feel like you should limit yourself to just one type of food. You should really try to be open to all of them. And the reason why I say that is because having chicken in kibble is processed way differently than having a chicken variety of a freeze-dried food. So just by offering the variety of style of food, you're going to get different results, and you may find that you get better results depending on the style of food. So what are your options? Of course, you've got kibble. There's also freeze-dried raw. There is canned food. You can do, and with canned food, you've kind of got like a semi-soft or like a stew type variety. I'm lumping that all together in canned food. You can do home cooked, which I highly recommend. Or you can do raw. You can do a DIY raw if you're working from a complete and balanced recipe, or you could purchase a commercial raw. Either way, those are excellent options. So I cannot stress to you enough that you shouldn't just only feed one style, right? You should really just take this opportunity to try something new. And especially if your dog is having allergies, they're itching, their skin is dry, their hair is not growing very quickly, and you'd like for their coat to fill out. Whatever the case may be, try a different style of food, not just a different protein, but a different style. And sometimes you'll see that all of those symptoms that you're seeing in your dog, that your vet is just prescribing you medication for, you can address them on your own just by changing the style of food or just by changing that protein. So get out there and try it. Most of these companies have policies where if you, try a food and it doesn't work out, you can send it back. So I would not be afraid to use something new. That's Rebel, she's playing. To try something new, and if you need it, for budgetary reasons, you need to be able to switch that food out, you can absolutely do that. Another trick that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned in this video is if you try a new style of food and your dog doesn't like it, try giving it as a treat. Sometimes when we put down a new food for our dogs, they're like, what is this mess? What is it that you got me? You trying to get me to eat some broccoli? What is happening? Right? So they're kind of like kids like that. But if you give it to them as a treat first before you introduce the food, this is a great way to introduce freeze-dried raw, by the way, all of a sudden it becomes this fantastic thing, and it's like, oh, I really like this treat, right? So you give it as a treat, and then you slowly introduce it into their food, and it's kind of a trick to get them more excited about it. Okay, and finally, we are going to talk about the biggest question that everyone has, which is, how often should I be rotating the food? It's really going to depend on your dog. It's really going to depend on, what they can handle digestively. So what I start out with as a recommendation for people is, if you're feeding kibble, I recommend that you rotate to a new protein or a new brand every bag of kibble. So, for example, if you usually buy a 15-pound bag and you have a 10-pound dog, then if that food lasts you for a month, then when you get towards the end of that month, you order your new food and you start to transition them over to the new food. And you do that every month. For some people who are feeding raw or home cooked, it can be as easy as, you're switching up a protein source and adjusting accordingly. In the Padfoot Palms group, okay, what I was going to say is, in the Padfoot Palms group, in the file section of the group, there are multiple recipes, each with a single protein source, some of them with multiple protein sources. So that'll give you some options if you're looking at doing a home cooked or a raw preparation and you're looking for some different complete and balanced recipes that you can use to rotate through so that you can provide some variety. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there are some supplements that you're going to want to have on hand. And I wanted to give you some little screenshots and show you what it was that I'm referring to. So the first up is the Slippery Elm Bark Powder, which I will put over here in this area. So this is really good, especially if you have a dog who has a tendency to get, not to be gross, but the really mucusy diarrhea. That mucus is actually part of the intestinal lining, and this helps the body rebuild that intestinal lining. It's great to have on hand if your dog ever gets diarrhea, if they get sick. It's good to have on hand if they're having any kind of digestive issues, if they're having an allergic reaction to something that they ate. It also reduces inflammation, so definitely something good to have on hand. And then the other item that you probably heard me refer to is pumpkin puree. And this is a pretty popular, easily available at your grocery store type of food item that you can add to your dog's food. It increases the amount of fiber that's in the food, which of course helps them firm up those stools if they're having an issue. If there's one thing that I hope that you'll take away from this video, it's that there's no rule that says you can only feed one thing. There's no owner's manual that says, well, your dog should eat chicken or it should only eat beef, right? So really get out there and try some new things. Don't be afraid to try new proteins, to try new food styles, right? Whether that's raw, home cooked, freeze dried raw, canned, kibble, whatever it is that you're feeding. Don't be afraid to try something different. Your dog will thank you for it. And the only thing I will say is that don't get crazy with it, right? Don't go out there and go to some specialty pet store and buy, kangaroo and wombat, right? Don't get crazy, because if, heaven forbid, your dog should ever develop an allergy, you will need to fall back on those exotic proteins, because you may or may not be able to feed some of the more readily available proteins like beef, chicken, turkey. So get out there, have fun with it so your dog can have fun with it. Just don't go off the deep end. Don't try to do too much at one time. Don't try to transition really fast from one to the other. It's a slow process. It's a slow build. But once you get to that point, then maybe you'll only need a 2 or 3 day transition for your dogs. Or maybe your dog will always need 2 weeks. It's really going to depend on the dog. But get out there and try some new stuff. And make sure that if you have any questions or you need help, in the description box is the link to the Padfoot Palms group. It is open to all breeds, all mixes. We are a positive group, and our goal is to help everyone so that they can be, the best pet parent that they can be. So give this video a thumbs up if you found it to be helpful. And if you haven't done it already, make sure you subscribe to the Padfoot Palms YouTube channel that we have here. It allows us to continue to create free content in our Facebook group, so make sure you go check that out. Okay, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Hey there. Fancy meeting you here. Hey, it's Allie from Padfoot Palms. Whoa, here we go. Learning. Let's do it. Let's do it. This is me pretending to read a book to make an intro for a video. How are you doing? Wouldn't it be great if I started out a video and somebody new had just clicked on the video? They had never seen my videos before, and I was like, hey y'all, we're about about to learn about some canine nutrition today. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. They would think I was crazy. They would think I was crazy. Do you come here often to read? So, one of the things that you want to do when you're feeding your dog is just enjoy how cute they are. Okay, well, that didn't start out right. Okay, so first up, we're going to talk about different food sources. And this is Rebel, and she is eating